In this week's episode, we talk about everything to do with fatherhood, how it's super important to hold space not just for your child, but for yourself too. How presence over perfection is what your child needs, and how playfulness can be both your healer and the key to abundance of joy. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. I believe we all come into this world carrying a timeless light, our spirit. When we connected to it, we feel alive and at home in ourselves. And when we lose touch with it, we feel lost, disconnected, and separated. Fatherhood has been a journey of remembering that light in my daughter, but also in myself. It's from that place that I find the tools to parent her and to reparent the parts of me that it still needs care. I honestly believe that our role as parents is to protect that flame, to let it shine brightly in our children, and to do all our own inner work so we don't dim it with our own fears or projections. Good morning, Ori. How are you?
Good morning, James. I'm really good, thank you.
Can you tell me more from that statement?
The statement really is the essence of what I do, what I believe in, the way that I live, the way that I see God or light or something in whoever's in front of me and the people that I work with. I believe that we all come into this world with some kind of light, some purity. Nobody comes into this world with any baggage of shame, of not enough, of any kind of guilt, of anything that's wrong. All those stories are stories that we take on. These are stories that are given to us. And those stories reshape us. And I think that as parents, our role is to protect our kids as much as possible. It's impossible to keep them completely pure because this world is not pure. But it's important to protect them and maintain that light, keep that, remind the kids that light is in them and they are light. And that light will always stay with them. That is the essence of what I do. And it's a reminder to myself that I cannot dump my baggage and everything that I've accumulated throughout life onto my daughter, because, like I said, she didn't do anything to deserve that. That's the essence of it.
Yes, you see it all the time because I think as adults, we go through our own experiences as kids and we take on a lot of what our parents have. And I think there's never been a time when we understand so much where we can actually impact and remove these projections and baggage from not just our parents, but from our lineage, from our ancestors, from the whole world. And I think you're right. It's about we've got to do the work. We've got to look inside ourselves to really find our own light internally. And then once we find our own light internally, shine it on the parts of ourselves which we might be struggling with. And within them parts that we might be struggling with, we can befriend it, we can accept it as ourselves, and then we can embrace it. And then when we start to embrace it, we start to shine like there's no shining.
Spot on. It's these moments when I work with men that you see that slowly they're starting to believe that I am lovable, I am good enough, I am beautiful, I am worthy. And to start coming back to self and to actually see all those messages, all those labels, all that weight, heavy weight and burdens that have been put onto us that we've been carrying. Again, it's not just our parents, it's society as a whole. We look around and kids grow up and they're looking at these, demigods in the form of, footballers and the models and the, TV actors, whatnot. And a lot of the time we feel I'll never be that. I don't have what they have. So coming back to this idea that I am something, I am a child of God, I am pure. And all those stories that I've taken on throughout the years that have been labels that have been given me are not mine. So learning to give those labels back is the journey.
Yes, it's owning not just our shadows, but also owning our light. Because you're right. I think I've seen it at pop star concerts and football stadiums where they literally, you said they worship, they see the parts of themselves in that other person, but they don't actually see it. Do you know what I mean? So they don't actually own it. So to give an example, you might see a rock star playing amazingly on stage and you're there like, he's so electric. It's then being able to own that electric part of ourselves, like part of ourselves, like kind of thing. And I think that's the key. It's not just owning our shadows; it's owning our light. And when we own our light, it's like you might see a actress who's really confident. We said, I can never be that confident, but you can. And it's putting that back, bringing it back to ourselves, and owning that confidence within ourselves.
I love that. I love the way you describe that. Yeah, owning the gold. Absolutely.
So let's start off. Can you tell us about yourself?
So, originally from Israel, lived in many places around the world. Spent quite a few years in Bali, in Australia, in Thailand. Before coming back to the UK, I moved to the UK historically in 2003, and got into the world of men's work in 2012 through the amazing Mankind Project. And that initiation kind of led me into much deeper work of just exploring who I am as a man, starting to look at the shadow within me and questioning what kind of man do I want to be in this world. In 2014, I was blessed to become a dad, and that was a game changer for me. Nothing prepared me for that. And that's been an amazing journey that I've been on. Recently, well, not so recently anymore, but I've been a therapist and a coach for men who are often very successful and strong on the outside, but feel a sense of emptiness and feel like something's missing on the inside. Men who might be in good relationships, good marriages, I should say, and they're working their asses off and still a feeling of like, there's something missing. I'm not who I'm meant to be, in a sense. So helping men come back home, helping men reconnect with that light, helping men heal themselves, if you will.
So we did chat before we came on live, and you wanted to talk about being a father, being a single father, and how that has shaped you to become the parent you are. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so relationships don't always work out the way we'd like them to or we envision in the beginning. And when I started this journey of becoming a dad, and becoming is the operating word here, because we don't become mothers, we don't become dads the day that, kids get handed to us. We become one. It's something that we grow into. And as I said, the relationship never really lived up to the potential that it had. And when my daughter was about 5, we came back to the UK. We were living in Australia before then. And I realized that in the relationship, in the dynamic between us, I'm the one who actually brings in the sense of security, the sense of stability, the sense of consistency in the parenting. So I took on the role of taking my daughter full time. This was something I didn't quite know what I was going into. I said, yes, I can do this. I just wanted to be able, because we were traveling a lot, we're moving around a lot, living this kind of very Instagrammable life before, but I really wanted to give my daughter just plant some roots and stay in one place. I had this very strong feeling that she wants her own bedroom, and she wants to have her toys long term, because again, we were moving a lot before. And I stepped into this role not knowing what I'm going into, just saying, yeah, I can do it. I'll figure it out. And mom is in the picture, of course, the whole time. But I was the one that started making all the decisions and all the providing the child with the safety and security that she needed at the time, and still needs to this day. So this role of becoming a father is, like I said, is becoming. It's not the father that I was 5 years ago is not the father that I am now. I see the world very differently. I see myself and my purpose differently on this journey. And it just keeps getting better and better, because the relationship between my daughter is one that I could only dream of, in terms of the synchronicity between us. We happen to be born on the same day as well. We share a birthday. So there's a lot of synchronicity in the way that we act and behave. And it's become the biggest gift. It's become a huge part of my identity, I should say, being a dad.
So it's hard for me to relate, because I've got no children at this moment in time. But how has becoming a father really shaped you to who you become?
So being a parent, as every parent will know, is so much more than just the mundane, everyday acts of, getting up in the morning, making breakfast, making sure that all the logistics are working. That's just the very basic of just making sure that, things are prepared and the child has everything they need on a day-to-day basis to live life in a safe, secure way, in a way where they know that they don't need to worry about anything. That's a given. And I knew from the start that is something that I'm bringing with me. But where the change really happens is in the way that I relate to her and her stories, and what she's not saying and what she's not saying, how I learn to attune myself to what's happening in her world. So to really heighten my senses, which is something I didn't have before, to acutely understand what she's experiencing and what she needs that she's not saying. Kids do not say what they need. You can ask them 100 times and you'll never really get a clear understanding of how they're feeling or what they need by purely asking them straight, simple questions. So it's really understanding, attuning is the key word here, to really see what's under the surface, and how am I showing up in the world? How is my shit impacting her? How is my nervous system impacting her? And what do I need to do to keep that away from her? She does not need that. This is my stuff. So how can I create a space within myself to hold her and hold space for her, for everything that comes up for her, without me being reactive, without me just going from a place of responding to her from a place of fight or flight or not enough coffee. So that's the essence of it.
Super important, because last week I was having a discussion with this lady about relationships and how men being able to hold space for women, for them to allow them whatever needs to come up. So how do you personally go from, how do you hold space for your child?
I hold space for her name is Mika, and I hold space for Mika first and foremost by holding space for myself. So every parent will know that if we do not put the oxygen mask on ourselves first, we cannot hold space or be there for anyone else. So learning to look after myself first, and this is not something that I knew. I definitely did not know this, when I first became a dad, and it took me many years to realize that taking on more than I can handle will backfire. So holding space for my daughter is in the form of, picking her up from school, or today she's at camp, but picking her up and showing deep interest for what's happening in her, what happened in that day. Not just the dry logistical questions of how was your day? What did you have for lunch? What's underneath that? What are the little dynamics? And make space, understand her rhythm. And that's a big one. Understand her rhythm of the day, when she wants to share, when she wants to express herself more. And anticipating friction, anticipating where I might present a boundary that she might not flow with, and be okay with that. And also question, how much am I attached to that boundary, to that, laying down strict rules. Is that really serving my needs or her needs?
Yeah, that's just a couple of things there. Firstly, you mentioned about giving yourself space first and foremost. And that's so important, whether you're in a relationship with your child, a relationship with your partner, relationship with your parents or other people. It's us first. And I think sometimes we can get into the habit of giving our energy away to everybody else except ourselves. And I think you can see that so much when people get run down, when people get into depressed, stressed, and it's realizing that it's this moment in time we're most important, but then there comes our daughter, becomes our wife, and once we know that we can protect, it's about really feeding ourselves first. We can then give that to everybody else because we're four, and then they become four. But then also you mentioned about understanding your daughter's need, but underneath. Now that's for the men out there, that's quite a complicated thing. Because I think we get communication. It's communication, but it's also being able to attune to their energy and our energy. And it's about building this trust within ourselves, first and foremost. And once you start to build this trust within ourselves, then we can start to sink in to other people. So I must admit, I'm very good at sinking into people and what they're thinking and that kind of thing. But for the everyday man, how can they start to build these skills?
Great insights, James. I like that. It really comes down to the basics of sort of mindfulness and slowing down and allowing ourselves to listen and to listen and feel ourselves first. So do you give yourself enough time to meditate, you make space for those kind of things. It doesn't have to be, proper, just sitting down, closing your eyes. It can be just a quiet walk in nature. Just listen to the trees, just listen to your own breath. Anything which allows you to slow down, let things come up to the surface and notice what's coming inside. And these are the fundamentals of building any kind of emotional intelligence, where you can then be attuned to other people. And it's hard for the dads out there who don't see their kids often enough, who are separated from them. It's hard for anyone who's not in a space where they get to do them. They might not even feel safe to do those kind of things in certain relationships. But it really comes down to allowing ourselves to do that. Some people have not ever been allowed to do that. And I mean that, I genuinely mean it. It's never, for some people, it's never felt safe to slow down and listen because of what might come up. It can be scary for a lot of people. So in a typical coercive family home, where the kids are being shut down, where the kids are constantly being given activities, being told, okay, right, you've got after school another club, another maths lesson, another something to do. The kids can never feel themselves, and that's a fascinating. That's a subconscious way of the parents just like preventing their kids from ever growing internally, because the parents cannot bear to feel what's happening for them. It's too much. So you'd rather pile on more and more activities. Some of them can be even positive ones, constantly taking kids to activities so they run around, so they're not internalizing what's happening for them. But the fear, kids have a fear of being bored, and parents have an even bigger fear of the kids being bored, because, oh my God, what might happen if the kids are bored? I will have to hold that. So boredom in our society has become a big no-no.
I can relate usually to boredom. So I'm obsessed in personal spiritual development, which is a good obsession to have. But what I do find is sometimes I get bored doing certain things. And when I get bored doing certain things, I allow addictions like social media, like social media to come into the forefront. So rather than being bored, I'm always like, you see yourself on the screens or watching films. And yeah, you're right. Boredom's almost being seen as the enemy. Don't get bored. Don't get bored. Just keep doing something. Go for a walk, or go on the screen. Keep yourself occupied.
My dad, James, my late dad, had a wooden plaque in his study, and it said, "Don't just sit there, worry." And that is the essence of, don't just sit there, do nothing. You've got to always keep yourself occupied. Just don't. Yeah, we do need to learn to sit down and do nothing again.
That's it. One thing I did good at doing is going internally inside myself and speaking to the parts. So I'm very good at, like, if boredom comes up, I'll be able to have a conversation. What does that boredom actually want? But then it's also actually breathing through that discomfort. So when you breathe, I find when I breathe through the discomfort, you always find something good at the other side.
Absolutely, 100%. Because you're making space, and that's the one thing we all crave for, is more, more expansion, more space, more space. Another word for it is abundance. To just like believing that there is more, because so many of us are conditioned to, there's not enough. We are not enough. There is not enough time. We're waking up, and there's like everything is not enough. So when we breathe into that space, we're reminded that there is more, and the feeling that there is more. This is like the universe is expanding, where humans are, contracting. So yeah, big one.
Well, it's this idea that we want to, sometimes people have big, big dreams. They want to go out into the world. They want to achieve this, they want to achieve that, but they don't allow the space for the ideas or for the inspiration to come in. And it's just what kind of space does for us. it gives us inspiration, gives us ideas, it allows us to just breathe into the parts of ourselves which have been neglected, which they can be our diamonds, they can be our gold. And it's within these parts that we can quite often find our purpose.
Well done.
And just while we're covering this as well, I wanted to talk about safety. So you mentioned that some people don't feel safe enough who have the space to become mindful, to meditate. So how can people start to create that safety in themselves? So obviously I'll give you an example. So it's a podcast about men, we'll talk about men. There might be this person who struggles, always keeping himself occupied by different things. He doesn't feel safe being bored. He doesn't feel safe basically doing nothing. How can he start to feel a little bit more safer so that he can perhaps spend 1 or 2 minutes in silence or in more mindful techniques?
First of all, let's address the word safety for a second. Most people don't use that word. That's more of a therapeutic word. What people will actually say is that, oh no, I'm too busy. I've got stuff to do. There's always something on the to-do list. And if you look underneath that, you'll realize that, I need to feel safe enough to know that there will be more time, or that there will be more opportunities will come. I don't want to miss that opportunity. So what most people are addressing is the scarcity rather than the abundance of actually allowing yourself to chill, allowing yourself to go for a walk in nature, allowing yourself to close your eyes when you need to. You don't need another coffee. You don't need more stimulants. You don't need to distract yourself with social media, shopping, porn, work, anything. What if you just sat there and allowed yourself to do something that, even a good old hobby, in the sense, a hobby that does not require any kind of dopamine or excitement, good old carpentry, or so gardening. Gardening is meditative. Go fishing, that's meditative. Go paint something, that's meditative. That's any space that kind of allows you to just slow down and go into some gentle flow state. Great. Find what's right for you. I think this, maybe safety is not the right word to think of it. Is like, just allow yourself to be you. Come back to self. And this is the best. You want to do something good for your kids? Do something good for yourself. And that's that should be the biggest thing ever. Allow yourself to go away. So often I reach out to friends and I say, friends who are dads, and I would say, hey, let's go for a hike on the weekend. Oh no, we've got to do something with the kids. We're taking them to something in another trampoline park. And you're thinking, for fuck's sake, man, do something for yourself. Let yourself unwind. Let yourself recharge. Find some kind of like mini retreat or something for a few hours. Spend time with your mates, not drinking, just chilling, just being. Be among people who don't need anything from you.
How has fatherhood really evolved in your life? And I'm interested as well, because with the men that you coach, have you seen the fatherhood evolve inside themselves?
Oh, massively, massively. Because let's just talk about the clients for a second, because the men who allow themselves to process their wounds, their traumas, will allow themselves to shift some energy within, they show up as better parents. There's so much lightness there. That doesn't mean, men are so often being seen as rigid or tough among kids, mostly because they're carrying, wounds of being told off and being maybe up as kids. So, and the fear of, so many men carry new dads, carry the fear of doing something wrong. Oh, be careful, don't do that. That's, be constantly being told off that something might happen. So many to first and foremost need to be given the space to grow internally and just learn things their way. They do things differently from the moms, and that's fine. There's no, we can, talk about forever about the right way to do something, the wrong way to do something. But ultimately, the men I've worked with who were given a chance to process stuff internally, to talk about their very challenging childhood experiences or burdens in the relationship, were able to show up better to their kids, but first and foremost to themselves. This is a very selfish. We can talk about parenting obviously has the biggest sort of side, which is of being in service, but it has to first and foremost come from a selfish place where I'm the good selfish, where I'm really first of all nurturing myself so I can nurture my kids and my wife, my family. As for me, like I said, it's an ongoing journey. And I'm able to have, she's 10, my daughter is 10, and I'm able to share certain things about my life. And I'll give you a great example for something that evolved during probably the hardest phase for me as a dad. And it's a bit of a cliche because it's COVID. And COVID started off okay. I was like, great, more time at home with my daughter. We can go on walks. We can just spend more time playing and doing the things we enjoy. But as time went on and on and on, this accumulated. I realized I'm not looking after myself. I don't have time because I had to be with her. I could not leave her. She was too young to be left at home. So I did not get a moment to meditate or get a moment to just listen to, something as simple as just putting on my music at home, because she would want to listen to her, an audiobook or something that's back then the kids were watching all sorts of stuff on YouTube. So basically not being able to look after myself back then. And I remember she was quite young, and I remember snapping at her, and she noticed, because she was spending more and more time with me, she could see how important this idea of meditating is. Meditating is simple as, I don't want to, dramatize it too much, but really this sense of just closing your eyes, connecting with your breath, and just giving yourself a few minutes on your own. Simple stuff. And I remember her saying, after I snapped at her, she said, "Dad, you didn't meditate today, did you?" No, I didn't. I didn't get a chance. And without passing the blame onto her, and without her feeling like it's her that was preventing me from looking after myself, it was a good reminder, and she could see that I need to look after myself. And kids need to see that. Kids need to know that parents do need to look after themselves. It's essential, because so often parents, both moms and dads, do stuff for themselves away from their kids, and the kids don't know that mom and dad need to recharge. They're not seen as, they're seen as, superheroes. They don't need to recharge. They're always on. Yeah. So, she saw that. And the biggest one, James, being able to apologize to my daughter and saying to her, after snapping at her, I'm genuinely sorry for that. That's not yours. That's mine. Obviously in language, in appropriate language. What you did may have not been the best. You shouldn't have done that thing you did, but the way I reacted, the way I responded is my shit. I should not have done that. And this comes back to the fundamentals of all relationships, especially, among couples and friendships even, the notion of tear and repair. So a fracture happened, the sooner we heal it, the quicker it will heal. So this notion of this idea that, me as a dad, and all parents should do this, is learn to apologize quickly to your kids. They may have done something wrong, but it's you who chose to snap. It's you who chose to go into, some to a catastrophizing space of some kind of fight or flight. How you respond to the kids is the fundamentals of creating a space environment for your kid to be themselves. Because I can still have a very harsh, boundary and say what you're doing is unacceptable, but I do not need to lose my shit. And if I do, I've got to apologize for it.
Mm-hmm. I love the way your daughter actually realized what you needed in that moment. It's almost like and I think what you're saying with regards to they need to see you recharging yourself. They almost see it, that's a boundary. They see you recharging yourself, so they know that basically if daddy is recharged and meditative, then he's going to be good. But at the same time, you putting that down yourself and saying, I just need 5 minutes or 3 minutes to sit down and to breathe. Can I have that time? It's almost showing them how to create boundaries.
It's also showing them how to look after themselves.
Yeah.
It's also showing them that, when they're, wherever they are, at school, anywhere they go, if things are not working the way they need them to work, just go away. Just get some space. You don't need to stay in that friction, in that fight. Just walk away, look after yourself, breathe, and come back. So back in those, lockdown days, the need to go out for a walk in nature was fundamental, was non-negotiable in a way. And it's stuck with us. My daughter still knows to this day that, we have some of our best bonding and our best connection on walks. And she sees that. She sees the state that I'm in, how I'm not on my phone. I'm just with her in nature. I'm present. And that's all kids want parents to be. If there's one thing, one word that the kids want is their parents to be present. Because kids are present. They're reacting, young kids especially. They're very, very present. Everything that's happening is like in the moment. If something goes wrong, they react, they respond, immediately. So one of the things, again, back to what I realized back in those early days of single parenting is how challenging I found it to get to the highs that she had. She's a very joyful, exuberant little person. And sitting with the pains, the challenges, the madness of, back in lockdown days, for example, and the weight that it had on me, it was quite depressive. There's no other way to describe it. And COVID was not the only time that I felt, some kind of sense of heaviness, of depression. And to be there, to be present and to be there for my child when her energy, her vibrations are so high and, pure, godlike. And I'm bringing this weight, this heavy, heavy weight with me. That's definitely been the hardest. That's been the biggest sort of challenge for me is in my parenting. And the way that I've learned to handle it is by, again, coming back to myself, to finding some kind of compassion and love for myself and accepting where I'm at. I cannot be where she is. And I don't need to feel bad because her energy is so high and my energy is so low. And another coffee will not resolve that. Really it's within me. I'm sitting with something and I've got to resolve that. But finding some kind of love and compassion for myself in the state that I'm in would ultimately shine back on her.
So for those men out there who perhaps struggle with love and compassion for themselves, how can they really what's the first or couple of first step they can start to take to, because you're mentioning about how during lockdown there's times when you got frustrated and depressed or stressed, shall I say. And this is probably quite a common thing, especially when you're in a space and there's no escape. So for the men or women out there who might struggle when it comes to really loving these parts themselves, how can they start to navigate that?
It's a journey. There really is a journey, and it starts with the smallest things. Find small things about yourself that you do appreciate, that you do like. Write them down. No, it's simple as that. I mean, I say simple. It requires some kind of work, as you know. This whole journey is work. So sit down, write it to yourself. If you feel comfortable enough to even put it on a Post-it note in a place where you can see and remind yourself some beautiful attribute about yourself that you do like, that you do appreciate, that you are something you can connect with. For one person, it will be the fact that they've got maybe a big loving heart. For another person, it might be that they're generous. Another person, it might be that they're anything that they feel good about. Start small and build it up. I mean, and knowing what's been very helpful for me, James, is remembering where did things start go pear-shaped for me. You know, like we established earlier, I was not born like I am now. So at some state in my life, I was, much more, I carried a much bigger light. I carried much more, I had my daughter's kind of exuberance and excitement. And then somebody poured, lots of people and, society poured water over that and diminished. And that light started to diminish. So I learned, well, I cannot be this and I cannot be that, and I'm not allowed to say certain things, and I've got to please, and people will like me if I show up one way and not another way. So I could not be my full self. So if you want to learn how to show some compassion to yourself, maybe go back to that little boy, that little girl who actually did have a much bigger light, and connect with that. And that's been, I know that it's been very, very helpful for me because it's a lot easier having empathy and compassion for a young being. You see a puppy, you see a baby, you see something vulnerable, small and vulnerable. It's a lot easier to connect with that. And that thing is in us. He, she, that younger part in ourselves is still there. Go back to it anytime you want to. That little boy did not mean to do something wrong. He was told that he did something wrong, and he was told off, and he was shamed, and he was made to feel like, that version of him is unacceptable. And if you carry on the way that you do, you'll never get to anywhere in life. So maybe that little boy never had to hear those words, and he needs healing.
Yeah, that brings in quite nicely. I've mentioned it a few times, inner child healing, on this podcast. And I think it's so important because quite often our actual traumas start when we're very young. And it's being able to allow ourselves to start on the journey of healing that inner child. But also what I've written down here is playfulness. Playfulness is one of my biggest values. It's the third biggest. Yet I've been feeling seriously blocked around it. And what I've come to realize is it's just doing something silly, like going like blah, 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 here on this podcast now in this moment. That is silly, but it's playful. And that's the kind of stuff that the inner child loves to do. In the moment, silly, just crazy stuff. And I don't mean jumping out of a plane and things like that, but it's more running around, just doing what makes you feel good, going into nature, doing some artwork. It could be climbing trees, building dens. I remember as a child, loved to do that. And just by going into this inner child and this playfulness, we start to bring ourselves back in, I feel, back into your childhood, which then I think, and obviously I've got no child to relate this to, but I say I've got a nephew. You can then relate to the child more easier.
I love that. I love that so much. We learn so much through play, kids especially. As parents so often say, oh, stop playing, stop messing around, stop playing. The fuck are you doing? I mean, that is in these moments, kids learn more than any other time. I mean, these are the moments that kids do not need to activate. They need to memorize things as they sit and do in school, sit and remember things. These are the moments where they actually embody their whole bodies. They're experiencing something. And joy, which is a byproduct of playfulness, is a gateway emotion to our sovereign. So for us to stand up and be in our healthy kings and our healthy queens, we need to connect with joy. And you can only imagine, you can only sort of visualize older people who are being silly and they've got nothing to prove. And it's funny because they no longer need to be in the roles they carried their whole lives. And they can just be, old and mumbly and silly. And it's funny and it's beautiful. And that is, like I said, a gateway emotion to that space of, how should I call this? A space of clarity and sovereignty. But yeah, it's place. And it's one of the things that, it's not always easy because I'm not always in the mood. And my daughter will say, hey, come and play with me. And we'll start with something that's just very banal. Maybe play Uno or something that does not require too much playfulness, but that often gets carried into something much. We start, teasing each other and that leads to something else. And stuff and the playfulness grows. But absolutely, I'm with you on that.
And so it's exploring it ourselves, isn't it, first and foremost? And then we can instigate it into the world. Definitely. We were discussing beforehand how when you've got two parents who are separated, it's more than likely it's going to be the mother who takes the child. So what do you feel is missing in how men are seen or supported?
It's a painful one, James. It's a very, very painful one because the way that our system is set up is one that in most cases in a very arbitrary way, courts will give the mom full custody and the dads will get to see their kids once a week, every other week. And it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. You're turning the dads into some pariah that is relegated and demoted to a figure, some distant figure in their lives. He's no longer able to embody being a father. He becomes some kind of, some guardian, someone who comes and sees them on the weekend. And it's tragic. There's, I would say in these cases, do whatever you can to find some kind of mediation, some kind of sense making where the parents are not fighting over who gets to have the kid. It's not important. It really, the only thing that's important is that the children experiencing having as much of dad and as much of mom as possible. And both parents need to remember that commitment they made when they decided to have the kids. And you say that a puppy is not for Christmas and nor are kids. It's kids are for life. This is a journey that you've got to be there. I mean, it sounds so dumb saying it, but it is. You've committed to something. You've brought life into this world, and you're given an opportunity here. This is the biggest gift life gives us, to pass something on to the next generation, shape, and to help shape the next generation. I'm not fond of the word raising children. I prefer, holding space for them. So you're given this opportunity to hold space and care and watch someone grow and give them the, the nourishment and the nutrition they need to become their full selves. There's nothing more, for me at least, there's nothing more gratifying. And I would just say, just do what you need to do so both mom and dad can be in the picture and each one can share their gold with the kids. Dads are needed, James. It's not even a question. I mean, we know this and we see this in statistics. We see how absent in homes where there's an absent dad, we see kids falling in education. We see kids falling a lot more into crime. And dads are needed. It's a given.
So with regards to your clients or people who perhaps are single parents, how has that impacted the child?
Not having a dad, you mean?
Yeah, not having a dad. And I suppose in your case, it's the other way around, isn't it? You might notice. How has it impacted the child as a whole?
We know that a child needs at least one parent to be there for them and wholeheartedly hold space for them. Kids need at least one parent to really be there to create some kind of safe attachment where the child knows that they can be their full self and they can develop and express their full selves and be loved no matter what. In homes where, I'll just talk about my clients, where I need to be careful here. I need to be careful with the language that I'm using here. I just don't want to give away any identities, but kids suffer. Let's just put it plainly. Kids suffer. Kids deeply need both mom and dad's presence. And when they're not there, or when the kids feel like mom and dad are fighting over them or are belittling each other, the kids feel it, and the kids start leaning in one way, and it's sad. It's not healthy for anyone.
That brings in quite nicely to the balance of masculine and feminine. If you have just your mother, then the child's going to, is this right in thinking the child's going to be more swayed towards the feminine energy, depending on that person, and then opposite for most men. So if you think about it with the child, if she's being brought up in a very feminine environment, they might be more, as they call it in men, the nice guys. Is this right?
Yep.
And then on the opposite end, they can probably, if they've been up in a very masculine environment, it can have the impact of maybe the alpha male. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, when a child is being exposed to very much, too much, or too little of either one, they will naturally lean to take on those traits. And we see this in homes, where fathers are absent, and there's some kind of belittling towards mothers talking badly, I should say, towards their ex-husbands. The kids take that on, and they carry that on throughout lives. And you and I have seen this in the Mankind Project with men who carry this wound of growing up without a dad. I'll talk about myself for a moment. So I grew up. My dad passed away when I was 12, and before then he was sick for many years. So I grew up in a household that was extremely feminine, I should say, and not necessarily in the healthiest possible way. Dad was unwell and was unable to show up as in his healthy masculine. So I didn't absorb strong, I didn't have the strong boundaries and discipline and the things that you'd want a dad there for, to balance the mother. And what I saw is a very, what we call a crumbling king, a king who felt he's not enough, a king who felt he's unable to provide, and carrying a lot of shame around that. And that's the kind of father I grew up with. That was, and looking back, it was very hard, but looking back, it's made me the man. It's made me the man I am today, because I've learned to integrate that and make sense of that experience. He passed away when I was 12, and I continued to integrate through the grief of not having him. I continued to integrate the absence of the masculine. It definitely affected and impacted the way that I showed up in my male groups, and I never needed to be, and I never felt like I needed to be some kind of alpha male, but I did need to prove myself. So to make a long story short, it's if ultimately we can integrate whatever wounds, whatever life gives us, if we do the healing, if we process it at some point in life and make the most of it, there's a gift in all of it.
No, nicely put. So with regards to you and your daughter, how did you start to integrate more feminine traits, or in more feminine energy with regards to your daughter? Because obviously you were saying earlier that you're there majority of the time, but it's kind of the idea that with being a man, how can you personally start to help her to embrace her feminine side a bit more, so it becomes a bit more balanced?
Just by being there. So the feminine energy is an energy of just holding space, is an energy of flow, is an energy of acceptance, is an energy of nurturing. All those things are happening all the time. It's not for me. I've had to, I'm finding a healthy balance between the two, between the masculine side, which is we're setting boundaries and protecting and providing security, and the nurturing side of just holding whatever's there. The masculine side is the side of doing. The masculine side is the side of looking after the doing making breakfast and dinner and doing the shopping and paying bills and cleaning here. That's the masculine. The feminine side is the side that sits with her, that just listens. It's the side that just, it's the side that is a part that's in me as well. I want to sit and cuddle her. I want to sit and read books with her. I want to sit and spend time with her. It's, for me, this is something that's, to some degree, that's the joy. That's the fun. These are the fun moments of parenting, leaning into that side. Yes, there's a lot of doing, and we tick a lot of boxes of going places and traveling and doing things. That's fun. But within those moments, it's actually just the wandering in nature, or just playing a game, or just getting lost, which are the moments I remember. And the moments that she takes in. That's the feminine side.
I can feel that. I love that. I love the exploring, the surrendering, and the sense of allowing. I'm doing this money membership thing, and they talk about masculine and feminine, and the masculine side is the action doing. It's the doing to create the money. It's the planning. It's the action. Bang, 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 bang. But in order to have all this action and bringing in money, people forget about the receiving, the surrendering, the ability to relax. So you action whatever you need to action, then you relax, and you do the action, you relax. And we forget we're in a society of doing. And so there's this idea that just surrendering is such a nice thing to do. And it's hard. It is hard because I've been brought up as mentality. I've got to do to make, to create a business, to achieve stuff. But that surrendering and learning to surrender is a whole new level of acceptance.
I'll give you an example. I love that. And I'll give you an example you reminded me of. So she's very creative, sits and draws a lot. And in that surrendering is making the mistakes, is learning to accept the mistakes that she makes when she'll work on a piece for a very, very long time, something that she might want to submit to school, and accept and love herself when she makes a mistake. So when she was younger, she would make a little mistake and then rip the whole thing up and hate the piece and, and cry and make it, there'll be a big drama around it. But the older she got, she's been able to sort of accept that space. And that's because she sees, I'll be with her and I will show her, I will show her how to love herself and the mistakes that she's made and be okay with that and move on. Don't be too harsh. Don't be too critical on yourself. You've done your best. As long as you're okay with that, as long as you're okay with this, you've sat with this piece and you've given it your best. Or she's a swimmer as well. So you've given your best in the competition. If you know, and that's a very strong masculine side of hers. If you know that you've done your best, you come out of the water. At that point, relax, surrender, embrace yourself. Yeah, we see that, in this kind of dance between the masculine and the feminine, we do that all the time. And yeah, they're both, we can never banish, we can never sort of push one side and say one is better than the other, or with her as well. And in my own parenting, embrace, bring them all in, make a nice big salad from them.
Yeah, nice. Can you finish off by telling us what is it that you do and how can people get in contact?
So I work one-on-ones, I work in groups, I run retreats, and I work predominantly with men who are successful on the outside, strong men who feel some sense of emptiness and want to connect to themselves, want to heal parts of themselves. And this is all with the intention of being in service, creating some kind of legacy, being their full, connecting to that light that we spoke of, and being their full version of themselves. So first and foremost, connecting to what is that treadmill that we're on, that we feel like we need to, who are we trying to please, what are we trying to prove in the world, and come back home to this sense of self-love, compassion, so I can be there for myself, so I can be there for my family, so I can ultimately build something, the dream. Where can I be found? My website is orilatter.co.uk, and the handle on all social media is at Ori Latter, ORILATTER. Simple. And if anybody wants to just jump on a call, have a free possibility call, just hit me up. We'll start with a little conversation.
Thank you very much, Ori.
Thank you, James. I really enjoyed this.